Hey guys, I am Beltran and welcome back to my channel. Today's video subject matter is women. Have they ruined politics? I am aware this is a controversial topic and that many will shout and say, you're a gender traitor. I'm not saying women shouldn't be in politics at all. Women have not been a net positive for the countries they have governed. And so these assertions I come to, generally speaking, based on history and obviously the fact that women biologically and psychologically are different to men. According to the website Medical Daily, an article was written based on a particular study. For the study, researchers recruited 46 participants, 25 female and 21 male, and ruled out potential contributing factors like age differences, education levels, marital status, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. Each volunteer was given a blood test at the beginning of the study to assess varying levels of estrogen and testosterone in order to see how they contributed to results. After the blood tests, participants were exposed to images that evoked positive, negative, or neutral emotions while undergoing fMRI brain scans. Participants were also asked to review their emotional responses when looking at the images. Overall, women reported being more reactive to the emotional images. Meanwhile, higher levels of testosterone were more frequently associated with lowered sensitivity to the images, while higher estrogen levels, regardless of the person's sex, almost always meant increased sensitivity. The connectivity results suggest that compared to women, men have a more evaluative rather than purely affective brain response during negative emotion. Now, we have established that women are in fact more emotional beings, more sensitive beings, as opposed to men being more logical and more evaluative. Unfortunately, women throughout history have committed blunders on a political scale. I'm not here to say that men haven't also committed political blunders, but the difference is the way it is at the moment is far worse. It is like turbocharged destruction. Many women are basing their politics on flawed ideologies, things like Marxism and things like feminism, which penetrate their way into the judicial system with implemented legislation, in addition to the education system, which then infects the minds of our children. Now let's get into the blunders that female politicians have committed. Gillard, Australia's first joke and female Prime Minister. Removing perjury from family law. Essentially ridding fathers of their rights from seeing their children under the guise of family violence. A woman, a mother, can completely lie. She could say that she has been emotionally, physically, and psychologically abused with no evidence to back it up, and men will suffer. Fathers will suffer. They won't gain custody of their kids. No thanks to Gillard. Children lose out on their relationships with both parents. It is our men in Australia, particularly family men between the ages of 30 to 40, who are committing suicide in Australia. These new laws are not helping the situation. According to mensrights.com.au and columnist Bettina Arndt, there's solid evidence that the major cause of suicide in this country is not mental health problems, but rather the toll taken by family breakup. Where fathers often face mighty battles trying to stay part of their children's lives up against a biased family law system which fails to enforce contact orders, and often facing false violence allegations which are now routinely used to gain advantage in family court battles. Research by the Australian Institute of Suicide Research and Prevention found that almost half of male suicides are linked with relationship issues. 1 in 20 are linked to child custody issues, 1 in 10 to pending legal matters. That's the glaring gender difference, with male suicide 3 to 4 times more likely than female suicide to be linked to relationship breakup and child custody. Then there's also that video of Gillard ranting and raving like a true third, fourth wave feminist with all the goofy juices that her ovaries are spitting into her brain, making her sound like a dickhead based on the fact that she was offended by something Tony Abbott said.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
This is an example of a woman who does not belong in politics. Hillary Clinton, former Senator Hillary Clinton, a perfect specimen of everything wrong with females in politics. Hillary Clinton claims to be an advocate for women's rights, particularly for women who have been sexually assaulted and raped. But wait a second, wasn't it Hillary Clinton who during her time as a lawyer defended a child rapist and laughs about it today?
I handed it to me and give to us. Well, I'm just getting ready to come from New York about this miscarriage of justice.
This woman cannot be trusted with the safety of an entire country. How about how deceptive she was regarding the email scandal? It is extremely fortunate that she never became president of the United States because her crimes are unforgivable. Upon her bid, the State Department released the first set of private emails on her account. It was May 15th, which in part related to the 2012 attack which took place at the US consulate in Benghazi. Wouldn't a career politician know not to send emails on a private account? It was in 2015 that she signed an affidavit swearing that she had actually handed over all of the emails. Yet, it was the FBI that discovered several more work-related undetected emails during her time in office. This is an example of a woman who does not belong in politics. Angela Merkel, the woman who has single-handedly destroyed Germany and will go down in history as the worst chancellor in the history of Germany. Pity that Germany is being led down this path of destruction. When former 1949 Chancellor Konrad Adenauer was setting them up for a path of success based on a pro-Western society. Under Angela Merkel, Germany has seen a rise in anti-Semitism. Ironic, huh? A rise in hate crimes against gay people. A rise in knife attacks and gang rapes. A rise in honor killings. Now, I can't help put my finger on it, but there is certainly a pattern, you know, maybe a particular group or demographic of people who are responsible for these particular types of crimes. Angela Merkel is responsible for the turbocharged immigration that is occurring right now in Germany. The infrastructure cannot support it. The resources cannot support it. The growing population of this collective upholds a different ideology to the German people. It's not pro-Western. This is an example of a woman who does not belong in politics. I think she would be able to run the country a lot better. Could you run the country better than Julia Gillard? Jacinda Ardern! Finally, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, the 40th Prime Minister of New Zealand, Ardern became an iconized feminist hero based on a national tragedy. After the massacre occurred in Christchurch, Jacinda stated that the adherents in the mosque had chosen to make New Zealand their home. That's true. Her words were, "They are us." However, she then claims regarding the perpetrator, the person who has perpetuated this violence against us is not. They have no place in New Zealand. The logic there is flawed. Why? Let me explain. A white cisgendered Australian man who clearly has issues and acts a horrible evil on devout adherents to a religion. These adherents of this different religion come from other countries and they espouse different ideologies. Jacinda chooses to embrace them. The logic here fails because whilst it is extremely inclusive and lovely that you choose to embrace these people, and I'm not referring to the people specifically in the mosque because what happened to them is tragic. Generally speaking, however, we're going to talk in terms of statistical averages. We know that the more you let in immigrants of a particular ideology, it can be detrimental to the locals of that country, of that community. Now, these particular adherents at this particular mosque did nothing to warrant an attack, and the perpetrator committed a horrible act of evil that should have never taken place. If she's willing to accept and embrace a community of people with what is considered by many to be a toxic ideology, then there is clearly a double standard because you're not willing to embrace this man who also has a toxic ideology. Also, Jacinda decided to don the hijab, a symbol of patriarchal oppression to many women in the Middle East. What are you trying to prove, lady? You are capitulating to the left, to the Marxist agenda, and to the Muslims. Note that she's doing exactly what women do. However, not that long after, Sri Lankans were murdered and killed. I don't remember her saying anything about these Christians and donning, you know, the crucifix around her neck. Double standards. Unfortunate as it may be, the Christchurch massacre actually showed us what the true colours of the New Zealand government was all about, because they attempted to acquire more power. This was done through restricting gun laws and banning certain semi-automatic rifles. If the people can't defend themselves, how will they fight back? Our worst fears are slowly coming true, and it's a tyrannical government. Jacinda helped lead a global pledge known as the Christchurch Call, intended at boosting efforts to keep internet platforms from spreading hate. This is done by blocking ISP addresses. So essentially, it's like communist China or North Korea. No internet access, you're not allowed to see that. It almost seemed like what occurred after the massacre for Jacinda Ardern was a performance. Sort of everything possible to capitulate to the masses and to the Marxist agenda. In some countries, did you know that if you have a thought crime and you say, I don't believe this happened in history, I don't believe that happened in history, if you deny this today, you can be jailed. Jacinda Ardern has effectively done the same thing. Did you know that sharing the footage is now deemed to be an offense that can land you in prison? Jailed for a thought crime. Just think about that. And this is my final example of a woman who does not belong in politics. This is a very big subject to try and undertake. Now, that's not to say that I believe this of every woman. There's always an exception to the rule. And yes, I am that exception. Anyway, I think that there are great women out there who have done fabulous things in a political level. People like Indira Gandhi and Margaret Thatcher. I think people like Sophie York, and I think Daisy Cousins, who is a commentator, is fabulous as well. There are women who are logical. Let me know what you think, guys. Stay tuned for my next edited video or live stream.